Okay, and welcome to this short recording, just giving some extra information and discussion on Task 1. Task 1 is due for this Friday, but I think I'd hope you all are aware that if extensions are required, if you're having difficulty getting to the deadline, just ask me, and I'm sure there'll be no problems in accommodating extensions. Ideally, if you could just try and get something submitted by this Friday, even if it's only half done, if you just got something either up onto Moodle or you emailed me directly with it, I'll be able to give you some feedback. I'll be able to maybe contact you and help. I've seen a few of you. I've seen some of your work already, and all in all, it's been very good, been absolutely excellent. So I just want to thank you for that, making an effort when I know things are very difficult and very strained for everybody. So the first thing I just wanted to reiterate from the presentation that I did on Monday. Here is the 5 sections listed that will form the core structure of your report. If you have those 5 down, and then you work around just filling that in, maybe putting an introduction in, and then just if you fill in each of the sections, the drivers, if you talk about the stakeholders, if you give some idea of the scope of the project, the purpose of the project, you talk about constraints. I mentioned on, I think, Monday, really 3 constraints. There should be no need to go beyond any more than that. And now I'd just like to talk a little bit about the functional requirements. So here's just a couple of points I think you should think about when you're doing the functional requirements. It's not essential to divide them into user requirements and system requirements, though in the presentation I did mention that it's a common way of dividing them. What it is important to do in your document is to divide them into high, medium, and low priority. Now, how many functional requirements should you be doing? In a real document, in a real requirements document for a real system, there would be many requirements. This is not a real document. All you're trying to do is just to show to the external examiner that you understand what functional requirements are. I wouldn't advise you to list too many functional requirements. I think a maximum of 2 or 3 per priority should be enough. If you're struggling, leave it at 2. If you find it easy, there's no real need, there shouldn't be any real need to list any more than 3 functional requirements, as I say, per priority. In the case of non-functional, no more than 2 requirements per class. If you remember, there's 8 classes. With regards the use case, I think you only need to list 1 use case. You only need to list 1 use case in detail, and that can be inserted at the end of the requirements section. What do I mean by use case and in detail? Well, this document here is the use case sample, which is up on Moodle, and it goes through a example use case for a hotel system. So what I'd like to see done is a description of a use case of the action that will be taking place, and then if you follow these 6 headers of identifier and name, initiator, goal, precondition, postcondition, and assumptions, to make your life easier, you can pick an action or use case that doesn't really have any preconditions or postconditions or assumptions. You can try and just go for something simple. It just shows that you understand what a use case is and how it can be used. And then if you could include the steps, the main success scenario steps that are gone through to perform the use case, to perform the action. As I said during the presentation on Monday, use cases have a variety of uses. They can be used initially to help define what the requirements are, and then they can also be used later on as part of the testing phase. Okay, so really one use case is enough to just describe a single core function. Okay, so going back to your 5 main sections: project drivers, project constraints, functional requirements. As I said, 2 or 3 per priority, non-functional requirements, 1 or 2 per class, and then your project issues is just giving more information about the system that might be relevant, such as maybe the project, which I believe only has a 3-month time span, has to be done within 3 months. Maybe it's happening over something such as Easter or Christmas, which needs to be acknowledged, or maybe something like that. August is happening at the end of the project. The project's meant to be finished by July, so it's worth noting that this is a potential constraint, a potential problem that may occur if the project goes past its deadline. Okay, but that should give you an idea of the 5 core areas. So I just wanted to take another second to just clarify what the purpose of the task is. You're not actually creating a customer requirements report. You're created an example customer requirements report whose purpose is just to show to the external examiner that you understand the important concepts of what a customer requirements report is and what the requirements gathering phase in systems development is. So rather than trying to create something which is as realistic and lifelike as possible, you should be focused on, have I explained well enough that I understand the concept? Have I explained that I know clearly what are example requirements? It's not good enough just to say a requirement is what a system has to do. You give examples of this to further explain what is and potentially what isn't a requirement. Okay. It's also possibly worth noting that task 2, which we'll be looking at, I will upload another recording which you can look at separate to this, which will just do an overview of task 2. We will be going at it in more detail next week. Task 2 is also a document to do with requirements. So you will be listing the requirements that you have already listed in task 1 will be repeated in task 2. So you're able to define your requirements maybe a bit more in task 2. I'm not sure that I'm being completely clear here when I talk about requirements in task 1 and task 2. So I'll try and explain things further with a little example. In task 1, you could be stating a requirement such as the system must provide access to users remotely. In task 2, you could reuse that requirement, or you would bring that requirement across to task 2, and you'd state potentially the system will provide access via a web browser. So you see, in the initial stages, you're just trying to state what the system will do. You're not trying to describe how the system will do it. In task 2, you'll be putting a bit more flesh and a bit more technical information into the requirements document to explain a bit more, not only what it is expected to do, but give some more information on how it's expected to do it. Okay. If you have a look at the other recording on task 2, this will give you some further information. In the meantime, good luck in getting some work done for this Friday. If you have any problems, you know my number. You can give me a call or send me an email, and I'll contact you. Okay, good luck.